All right, guys. So we should be live. We've been sitting in here having a good time. We're going to get started. A few minutes of warm up while we wait for people to get in here a little bit. I see that the live chat has already gotten going, and this is fantastic. We'll redo introductions in a little bit, but I'm sitting here with good friend and brother Jeremy Guyton. He lives about 10 minutes up the road from me,
Yes,
something
sir.
like that. So we get to see each other frequently, often fellowship together on Shabbat. You'll learn more about his story and his background in a little bit. Also here on the stage, we've got brother Zek, who is also known as the Revolting Man. Fantastic YouTube channel that he's got. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I think we're live on his channel right now as well. He can confirm for us.
Yeah, we've got audio and video on our channel, and I will let you know as people start showing up. I'm just checking into the chat right now.
Fantastic. And also this evening we have with us brother Jan, and we were giving him a hard time a minute ago because he gave me the idea for the barbershop background because this is going to be a good barbershop talk. And then he comes dressed in camo. He stepped up in front. He stepped up in front of the blinds with that shirt on and almost disappeared on me. That was freaking hilarious. So we're gonna have a good one tonight. I'm really excited about that. A happy Veterans Day to Zek, a veteran in the room, and so appreciate your service there. A former Marine, well, not a former Marine. I guess once a Marine, always a Marine. But I don't think he eats crayons anymore. So,
and happy Veterans Day to you as well, Pete.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. How many? We've got a few coming in here.
Yeah, we've got about 8 watching on my channel right now.
Okay.
And they usually filter in a little bit at a time. We'll probably get up to anywhere between 40 to 75. It just varies.
About his chat.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, good. So, and any questions that he's got popping up, we can answer as well. So good stuff, guys. What I want to do is just we're going to have some discussion this evening about unwritten rules of patriarchy. And I want to start with asking our brother Jan here, who gave me the barbershop idea, to tell us why the barbershop and why this is significant, I think.
Boy, the barbershop. So, I'll tell you, in the so-called African-American community, and I would say other communities around just in Western culture, the barbershop is a place people know where you go get your hair cut. But I think the idea of the barbershop extends much further than that. It's deeper than that. In my parent culture, the barbershop was literally a place not only where you go get your haircut, but it's a place where you socialize. And in my community, I grew up way up in a part of Michigan, which was part of what people know as the quote unquote Black diaspora, as GM Ford Chrysler began to open up opportunities for folks. A lot of people from the southern states migrated up during the 40s, 50s, and 60s into the cities of the North. And the barbershop was one of those cultural icons that took a life of its own in those northern cities. And the idea of the barbershop, as I stated before, was not just a place where you cut hair, but it was also a place where men could gather. Men could socialize, and men could have conversations in a space that was generally exclusively male driven. And so the culture was a culture of such where people could take their mask off, sit back, chill while you get a haircut, and talk about life. And so classically, when you think about a barbershop, my memories would, when I check my memories, you would see elders, you would see all generations there. You would see elders, you would see those who were more middle-aged, you would see those who were in their 20s, young adults, and then you would see teenagers, and you would see young children. And there, because it was a pretty much predominantly male exclusive place, you would find conversations you just couldn't find, especially in an era where you didn't have social media. I mean, this was a place where you met. Oftentimes people in the African-American community will talk about, the Black church as being one of the icons, and that's certainly true. But the barbershop was a place where people could have real conversations, where men could have real conversations. And that's where they talked about life. I mean, they talked about everything that was going on, from divorce, from children, from everyday activities, from struggles that they experienced as men. And that was something that was really transformative as a young boy going there with my father or with my grandfather. You have 3 generations there getting haircuts, and then talking about life. And so that's how me as a young man, and many young men across the U.S. probably learned exactly what life was like as a man, whether you were from African-American culture, whether or not you were from European American culture, you name it. That was a place where you can talk and you did not have to have a filter on. And so it was a place where men could be honest. And
Right.
so that's what I remember as the barbershop. That's the cultural icon of the barbershop.
So you told me what you felt like this would equate to in scripture, and why the motif is important here. Explain that, please, sir.
Yeah, I'll tell you as well. When we think about Hebraic culture, the question that you would have to ask yourself is, where did the elders meet? Right? The elders met at the gates. There at the gates, things were discussed. Life, family issues, law, how to judge on issues of law, discussions of culture. That is what happened down at the gates. And so the gates, symbolically, when you get here, in my mind, said, well, you know what, the barbershop was like that. I mean, we would have politicians come into the barbershop just to talk with the barbers, because 9 times out of 10, those barbers either own property or they had significant influence, because through the barbershop, people traveled through and connections were made, business deals were made. So cultural development, although some people might not think so, especially in my community, a lot of cultural development came not only out of the church, but it also came out of the barbershop. That's where deals were made. I can remember growing up as a boy, people talking about religion, law, politics. And then from there, you would see sometimes the effects of those discussions happen in the community at large. And so in my mind, symbolically, the barbershop was a type of elders at the gate, because the men who were there cutting hair and the men who were not necessarily cutting hair, but they're socializing, were well-respected men in the community.
It's a place of networking.
Network. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me growing up, I think my grandfather would often take me with him to the Colonial Drugstore in the morning for breakfast. And so that's where all the men were. Now, obviously, that wasn't a male-only space, but it was where, all the older businessmen were before they went off to do their work for the day or whatever. So that's where I experienced something similar to the barbershop. But is anything like that either you or Zach, where would you have seen that? Or Jeremy, where would you have seen that kind of interaction?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I would say, growing up, I grew up Baptist, and my life centered around the church. And one of the things that we had was a Bible printing ministry, and often there was activity surrounding that. But that wasn't just men; it was definitely men and women.
So it wasn't a male-only space.
No,
Okay.
Definitely wasn't a male-only space, but there were certainly some opportunities for that.
Okay. Zach, you got anything like that? Were you raised?
Well, so I would this is not a criticism of my father. My father did an amazing job. But one of the mistakes he did make, not that he said such a great job on me, but one of the mistakes he did make is that he isolated himself as a man. And so we didn't really have any of those institutions, you know. We were always in the church, but even back then the church was already pretty feminized. And my father's a little rough. And he just didn't have the ability to bring us into those kind of male dominated social groupings. The stand-in ended up being that I had 3 brothers, and so yeah, I mean, I guess we still got that, but not in that institutionalized sort of way you guys are talking about. That would have been very, very valuable.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the church was very, feminized. I would say that it was spoken about, the patriarchal things and men being the head and all of that stuff in the circles that I was in, but certainly wasn't walked out anywhere close to what we're promoting at this point and attempting to do ourselves.
So what oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one aspect of that barbershop too, especially when we, go ahead, Zach. Yeah. One of the things that the barbershop,
I was just going to say the church, and the Methodist.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things with the barbershop concept, a lot of young men, when they had questions, because even in the community at that time, we had already started experiencing effects of, I would say feminism in its form, or really economic depression happening in the Black community in various forms. And so what would happen is that at that time, we had already started to experience social change in terms of, boys not having fathers to the same extent as maybe other cultures. And so what happened was the barbershop acted as a type of, almost like a type of place where young men could get advice about life in general, about, dealing in their families where you don't have a father. So a lot of the elder men there also functioned as almost like surrogate fathers, and taught a lot of young men there. That's where you hear a lot of stories about, women, how to interact with women, how to pick a wife. These kinds of discussions were going on in the barbershop that weren't necessarily occurring in the church at that time, at least in my subculture aspect of the American culture. And so it was a place pretty much 360 where you learned about all types of aspects that are directly related to men, unfiltered.
So what we want to do, I guess, this evening, we're going to be covering some specific topics with regards to the unwritten rules of patriarchy. It was precipitated from a comment, or it was longer than a comment. It was a 14-minute audio I put onto the Patreon channel that I have, specifically in the men's section, because it was specifically to men about some of the things that deal with patriarchy. And at Brother Jan's recommendation and then some internal discussion, we thought, you know what, maybe we ought to run this for a broader audience and not so much look specifically at exactly what we were talking about, but open it up to a broader segment of what are some of the unwritten rules of patriarchy, and or, as the case may be, polygyny. Now, all those that are associated with me and my channel, and certainly I think Zach on the Revolting Man, you recognize that a man having more than one wife is perfectly acceptable biblically, and it's not a problem at all. And so some of what we cover this evening will be in that direction for those who have questions. You go, what? Well, don't be surprised, because none of us here have a problem with that, and it may well come up. But Yeah, Zach. So the specific place that maybe we want to start, or does somebody have an unwritten rule they want to start with? We'll do that, and then I can bring back mine here in a little bit that I had discussed, just to see if somebody else has something they want to lead out with.
I would lead out with, when you're preparing for marriage in general, as a man, you have to be 100% honest with what you want, who you want it with, and when you discuss it with them, you need to be straight up. I mean, you cannot sugarcoat stuff. If that is the lifestyle that you're interested in, and it's a Hebraic culture thing, and you want to build that kind of family situation, I think that's something you need to make sure you're committed to psychologically in your mind. And this the same would go for if you want to just have marriage in general, be married in general. Be really honest with yourself in a self-evaluation of your strengths and your weaknesses, and don't sugarcoat that. And you have to be really honest with yourself. And then as you approach somebody, you have to hold that same level of honesty. And as men, I think in Western culture, we're kind of taught sometimes to really sugarcoat things. We don't really say exactly what we want. We kind of hem and haw around it. And we've been trained over, 3, 4, 5 generations to be that way. And I don't think you can do that if you want to build a very masculine-centered household. You have to learn the art of being honest with yourself, and then you have to be committed to just being truthful with where you stand and being able to articulate that. So that's one rule you got to have up front before you even talk about marriage in general, and that's extended to a plurality situation in marriage as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If you're not upfront, brutally honest, even, hopefully you can tamper down the brutality, but it's got to be very clear upfront what your stances are, what your beliefs are, and how you're planning to walk forward in your relationship with the Almighty, with the Most High, because that's first and foremost. And so if the Almighty has something for you, you're going to do it, whether she fights you on it or not, and she's got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back, I think in part to what Brother Jan was saying is, as a man, it demands that you have clearly defined boundaries and that you not be wishy-washy or soft. You've got to be the rock. And for me personally, one of the things that helps me to be the rock is having a specific vision and a specific mission statement for myself, for my family, for all that I lead, saying, this is what I'm about. And if you're on board, great. If you're not, that's okay. But maybe you don't need to be here, right? Or that's the way a man who's looking for a woman should be thinking, because you don't want to add dead weight to your ship. But by the same token, the ship's got to have direction, and then you set your sails according to what the currents and the winds are around you, so that you can accomplish the mission. My argument would say that mission needs to be something that the Most High has given you, and then that becomes the central point of your core, or your steel, the rock, the firmness of your being, so that you're not movable or shakeable by everything else around you, including the woman or family or anything else.
Well, first rule of manhood is never pay for an orgasm. I'm serious. It's never worth it. But the blueprint, I've never. That's one of the few rules I've never violated. I've never paid for an orgasm. We've got a blueprint though for masculinity we need to start off with. Psalms 128. That's why I lit off with the dirty joke, because we're going to the scripture. You know, you gotta balance it. Psalm 128 is the foundational scripture for men. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord. So as men, our first rule is fear God. That walketh in his ways, for thou eat the labor of thine hands, to be employed. Have it be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house, thy children like olive plants around thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man bless that feareth the Lord. The Lord shall bless thee out of Zion, and thou shalt see the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's children, peace upon Israel. I wish it was sexier than that. And I know that we could talk about the details, but it's fear the Lord, keep his commandments, have a job. And those really are, if we do those three things, we get the wife, we get the children, we get happiness and long life. And now, like I said, the devil's in the details, but it's that simple. Psalm 128 should be tattooed on every man in the nation's forearm if we believed in tattoos.
Yeah. Man.
That really should be our life first. Fear the Lord, keep his commandments, fruitful labor. No, you eat the fruits of your labor. Your wife will be, fruitful vine. So, get married, have kids, and then raise those kids to be blessings.
And grandkids.
And that is the family. And then, of course, that leads to the Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the family unit is what makes healthy state, healthy family, healthy state, and the two just flow right into each other.
And you are correct. It's incredibly unsexy to talk about, and men want other secrets, and we're going to get to some of those for sure. But at the foundation, at the root of it, again, is fearing Yah, and then being fruitful and tilling or cultivating the earth, having dominion in that respect. So it's gainfully employed, being productive, and at the same time, I think that productivity and that vision are attractive to a woman. Okay, when she sees a man that knows where he's going, and that's another one of those unwritten rules of patriarchy. If you are a man and you know where you're going, if your purpose in life is more than simply getting a girl, right? See, a lot of men think that they qualify for marriage just by turning oxygen into carbon dioxide. However, such is not the truth. It's much more than that. It's a matter of actually being productive and doing something or moving in a direction that a woman would look at and go, I want to follow him because he's going somewhere.
Yeah. Recognize that you're the prize. And society has that backwards, obviously. And we've got to be.
Okay, so the question right here, why?
Well, that's a question.
Okay.
Go up to. Anyway, society has it backwards. Absolutely. The man with his vision in front of him and marching strongly towards it is don't compromise in order to gain a woman,
right?
Or women. It's never going to be worth it.
I did a whole video in our Patreon section a while back titled "Women Need Men," and it might have even been titled that men are the prize or something like that. But the bottom line is exactly the same thing. The fact being that a man doesn't need a particular woman. In order to accomplish being fruitful and multiply, he needs a woman, but it's not a particular woman. However, a woman needs a man because a woman needs covering, needs protection, needs provision, needs all of those things that come with that. Where the world, I'm reading a book right now, I hope to do a review on at some point, titled The End of Woman, which deals with the roots of feminism and the destruction that has been wrought as a result of feminism. And so the bottom line, though, is that woman needs man. Man does not need a particular woman. And so that supports what Jeremy's talking about men being the prize, or the man being the prize. A woman should be looking for a good man. And that's the real prize.
Yeah, I would add to that. You understand over and over in Scripture that without a vision, Yah's people perish. And so the question, just like Brother Zach there brought up, is where do you get the definition or the specifics concerning a vision? And so you have to start back really at the beginning. He told Adam and Eve that to be fruitful and multiply, and to inhabit the earth. And then he told them something else specific. He said, hey, and have dominion over the earth. Cultivate dominion. When you look at that word dominion, you're really thinking about that the earth at that time, and when you look at it, is basically like almost like a lump of clay. Make it into something. So when he created us with a potential to be able to create, far less on a smaller scale than what the Father does, but we image him. And as a man, you image him. And if he tells you, hey, be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion, you get this idea that he wants you to spread out. He wants your borders to increase, but not just haphazardly increase, in an organized fashion, in a fashion where you give order to chaos. So he's giving you this type of marching orders right from the very beginning. Your mission as a man is to increase dominion, to extend his dominion. And he gives you a tool for that, right? And the tool for that is this concept of, hey, keep my commandments, be fruitful and multiply. And my vision is that I need you, right, as my representative on earth, to extend this order, this heavenly order, as it is in heaven, so shall it be here on earth. And I need you to represent me and extend this dominion outward. And so you really have a call there for work to be done in furthering the kingdom. And of course, we know that got cut off and really set back by sin, but the Father had a plan to rectify that and to rebuild us so that we can continue to do what he had really put in us, in our DNA to do. The talk that Peter and I did earlier on, why women need sex, really shows you in the DNA and how DNA and the combination of male, female, how that works, and how men, even written in your DNA, you have almost like a command or an injunction to take over, to organize, to bring order to, right? And so I think that, Brother Zach is 100% right. That is what we're supposed to do. And Ecclesiastes says, hey, listen, here's the sum of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments is the whole duty of man. I mean, nothing else to it. That's the whole duty of man. And so I think if you have that as a vision, it can orient you correctly so that you can begin to make choices that support that mission all along the way. So.
And you actually alluded to a fantastic, or you gave a quick mention to a fantastic 2-hour discussion that we had, looking at the medical research, looking at some of the biblical research, indicating a lot of different things. Now, it certainly has the clickbait title of Why Women Need Sex, but the bottom line is that's what we discussed. Not only that, what they need is they need a single man. They don't need a whole bunch of different men, and they need the very specific guidance and everything else that comes with that. But you did an amazing job in that. And I would recommend anybody that wants to listen to an amazing discussion, go back and find that in my feed a while back, because Brother Jan was amazing, and he's got the credentials and qualifications to discuss what we discussed. That was just off the chain. That was an amazing discussion. Let's talk a little bit now. All of you men, or each of us, has a household. Between us, we've probably pushing almost 100 years of marriage between the four of us, or we've got close to that. We've got a lot. I'll put it that way. I didn't sit down and do the math on it, but there's a lot of marriage experience between us. And each of you has a well-ordered house. Each of you has a rather different background or experience set. And each of you has a different way of managing your house. So what I'd love to do is to hear from each of you a little bit about maybe your house or your experience and how you manage your house, or some things, lessons that you've learned along the way, some things like that. And certainly somewhere in here, I'll chime in with some for myself. I'm going to put Zach on the spot because I know we lose him in less than 30 minutes. He's going to have to go somewhere else. I'm going to put him on the spot because he's got some amazing stories. But at the same time, I know that the lessons that he's learned in the School of Hard Knocks, and has an amazing family. And if I'm not mistaken, 15 children.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
he can tell you.
Zach, give us a little bit here, and tell us some things about how you run your house, and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned. What makes it successful now, where you have had some previous challenges or failures or something?
So I can tell you the single biggest thing that sabotaged me in the past, and that I sabotaged myself with. And there's two or three of them, but they all kind of relate to each other. The biggest one is that I refuse to believe that my drive for dominance was healthy and given to me from God. And so what I would do is I would try to suppress the rule. My main rule is be the asshole up front. Just be the asshole early and often, and everything goes really, really well when I do that, for a couple of reasons. The big one being that if I don't do that and I start trying to tamp down my drive for lack of a better word, kingship or headship, that agitates my soul, and it starts building up and building up and building up. And then I explode, and I might be able to tamp down, my natural tendency to be the master of my household for 6 months or a year. But then someone's going to do something ridiculously stupid, and I'm going to explode like a volcano. And it's all going to come out at once, and everyone's going to think, oh, what this is just a violent, mean, volatile, unpredictable man. When it was completely predictable. Anyone who knew, who knows men, could have seen how I was behaving and being treated for the last 6 months, and known that there was going to be an eruption. And when I finally accepted that, no, it's not just that I'm unreasonable and selfish and inflexible and require things to be my way, that's a good thing. That's a positive thing, especially in our household where it's so complex and there's so many moving parts. You got 15 kids and we're a blend family. And so there's groupings, there's a grouping of 5 kids that are all, full siblings and have their own parent. And then there's a grouping of 3 and a grouping of 6. And there's 2 that are not fully, it's really complex. And if I try to be nice, if I try to give people options, if I try to make people like me, and I love to be liked. I love to be liked. I mean, I want people to love me. I'm incapable of making people love me. I don't know how to do it, but I love it. And if I make those compromises, I end up in a conflagration, a volcano of rage and anger that just blows up on everybody, and everybody gets burned. And that's how my first marriage ended up. Well, there were a whole host of problems in that marriage, but those were the things. Those were the times that ended up driving that woman away. She was leaving no matter what, but that was the excuse she used. I would take it and take it and take it and take it and take it. And I would think, I got to love her with the love of Christ, not having any idea, never stopping once to think of how Christ loves the church. If we could, this is another one of those lessons. If we could just pound into men's head, yes, you have to love her with the love of Christ, but how does Christ love the church? Christ is not nice to the church. I'm sorry. He says it. I've come with a sword. I don't come to bring peace. Christ tells the church, you will die. You will suffer horrific torture and death rather than so much as deny my name. I've told my wife, if anyone ever threatens to kill her, if she doesn't claim to not be married to me, she just lie. Tell them she's not married to me. But Christ is like, no. If they put that gun to your head and tell you to deny me, you die. You don't deny me. I am your Lord and Master. Christ does not love the church the way the Precious Moments tells us that he loves. It's not sheep and babies. It's not sheep and babies. So that was the first thing I had to learn. I had to learn that wives are commanded to fear their husbands the same way us as believers are told to fear God and fear Christ, and you've got to accept that, and we don't like it. It's like, no, I don't want her to fear me. I want her to love me, and I want her to do it because she respects me. So, well, that's bullshit. I mean, that is utter bull lie, and I think much because that's how we want Christ to treat us. That's the kind of husband we want Christ to be to us. That, oh, I love you, honey, whatever. We don't want that hard-edged master who, requires us to die rather than deny his name. And so, we try to be that husband to our wives too. That we try to model that to our wives. And the very, the thing I had to do when I started making the turnaround was say, oh no, this is natural. I am supposed to be a hard ass. And when I'm a hard ass, I'm not being mean to people. Just like, Pete will tell Pete, you were an officer, right?
And a gentleman.
But and officers in officer training, they still are hard on you. And it wasn't because they hated you. It's because they respected you and they wanted you to live, For me as an enlisted man, it was my drill instructor. The drill instructors were animals. They were animals. They treated us like subhuman pieces of trash for 3 months. And then we came out the other side and they handed us our Eagle Globe and Anchor, shook our hand and introduced themselves to us for the first time as fellow Marines. And the lessons they taught us affected us for the rest of our lives and kept a lot of Marines alive, through terrible things. And when you hear it in that context, of course, you say, well, of course that's true, but it would never apply to our wives and children. And my question is why? Why wouldn't it?
Right.
Why would that same thing not apply to them? Are they not people? Are they not humans? I mean, so just accepting that no, my natural drive. You know what I hate? It embarrasses me that this is who taught me this. Pete, when you need me to shut up, just jump in. Damn John Eldridge and Wild at Heart. that's when I started learning this lesson that no, my God-given nature as a man is natural and it's good. And this drive to be an asshole, this drive for dominance, this drive to be, top dog and king and have my women and children under me, this is natural. This is right. This is the created order. And everything started to fall into place after that. The other thing that was really helpful and important along those same lines is I realized, my love of naked women is natural. It is not shameful for me to love naked women.
Right.
God made them naked to begin with for a reason, and he put in me a drive to accumulate naked women that mirrors the drive he has to accumulate your believers. Christ and our Creator's desire for relationship with us is mirrored in my relationship and my drive and my desire for women. And that gets a little weird. I know it's a little hard to think about. We don't want to conflate sex and religion too much, but it is. And
That's
when
good.
I finally stopped saying, "Oh, you dirty, rotten, filthy pervert, you're attracted to women with big breasts," and I'm like, why wouldn't I be? There's whole passages in the Bible about women's breasts and how wonderful they are.
Yeah, I was going to say that book almost didn't make it into the cut a couple times.
Yes, I know. Thank God that Martin Luther.
More than once in marriage counseling, I've told people get some wine, get some candlelight, and go read the Song of Solomon and see if you wake up, work out some of that problem you've got with your woman or man, whatever.
I have known so many men though who use that as an excuse, like literally, like they've said these words to me. "Oh, Zach, I can't be a leader in my home. I can't be a leader in my church. I struggle with lust." Shut the hell up. What did King David do on top of that roof?
Zach, that was me 10 years ago. Yeah. That was me 10 years ago. Absolutely.
It was me. Oh, I'm a pervert. I'm a dirty, disgusting, lustful, sinner.
And part of it is having a wrong understanding of what lust is, according to what Yeshua says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 32 or so, somewhere right along in there.
Is it 28? I think it's 28.
It might be 28. I don't want to get off into that tangent because we could have that discussion all night long. But let me shift gears here and run it to Jeremy. And let's hear a little bit about Jeremy's story. His family, fantastic family, been married for 20 years, 20 plus
Coming
years.
up on 20. It'll be 20 in February.
Wow, good for you. Fantastic.
For me, I mentioned earlier I was raised Baptist, and to tag on to what Zach was saying about the lust thing, that was hammered into the men. Men were very much shamed for their God-given sex drive and desire for the beauty of a woman's body. And that was, I myself taught lessons about that for a good amount of time. And that was definitely a piece of it. But even before that, again, similar to what Zach said, once I realized that it was my job to step up, take the reins, command the household as I saw fit, I wouldn't necessarily have labeled it as be the asshole, but hey, that was the time, that was the turning point. Prior to that, when it was, things like just yell at each other and no one's really clearly in charge and all of that. It was a constant battle. Even the children were beginning to yell at not only at each other, but at myself and my wife and all of that stuff. Once I put a stop to that, I stepped up and put a stop to that in a very real and tangible way. It not only made a big difference on Sarah and the kids, but a huge change in myself as well. just realizing that it was my duty to step up, my duty to do that. It was not wrong to take those reins. It was, in fact, what I'm commanded to do as the head of my household. That was a huge turning point, and that was roughly 10 years ago. And then further down the line, all the other different things with regards to the continuing learning about patriarchy, which I'm still a student. I'm not claiming to have arrived, but continuing to learn about patriarchy, learning about polygyny, and then from there.
And while Jeremy says that he's still a student, I want you to know that he was on the editorial team for Authority, Headship, and Family Structure. And I certainly have valued much that I've learned from him. He big book right here. I would recommend Authority, Headship, and Family Structure. And he was on the editorial team for that. So
I didn't know that. Wow, that's impressive.
Yep.
So it was definitely primarily Pete's work, no question there. But anyway, once all of that fell into place, or really the Father convicted me of it, and I began walking that out. That's when the change in my family happened. Been married almost 20 years, and it was about 10 and a half, 11 years ago when I stepped up and made that change in a very real and tangible way. And I would describe the difference of the first 9 years or so of my marriage as, virtual war zone. And the last 10 has been virtually complete shalom.
Very, very peaceful house.
Yeah. So what Zach said, I'd probably word it a little differently, but very, very, very similar testimony. That was when the change happened, was when I actually stepped up and began real tangible leadership.
And so, I know that you've got some Telegram stuff on the side beyond participating and helping in my Torah Men's Fellowship, as well as my Patron Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that you're intentional about is teaching the roles of men and women, the role and how those are to function together, some about the polarity and where the responsibility the man has to order his house and, if necessary, even use discipline.
Absolutely. I think it's necessary. Right. I don't think it's if necessary. Well, I think it's necessary.
Yeah, I agree. I guess how,
the method may vary.
Right.
And what he's referencing is I have Telegram groups that and it's not a secret. I promote domestic discipline. And part of one of the questions actually was just asked, I think earlier today or last night, in one of those groups is, why is the marriage saving effect so commonly talked about? Because multiple people I've talked to on this subject say that one change in their dynamic saved their marriage. And my answer is because it's forcing both the man and the woman to actually walk out the roles that their creator created them for.
So take 2 seconds, because I know you're so good at this, and talk a little bit about Ephesians chapter 5, 22 to 33, and how marriage is to mirror the Messiah and the ecclesia, or what's commonly called the church.
Yeah, I mean that's something that Paul makes some pretty clear references with regards to that. Women, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, right? Well, that Zach touched on this earlier. If women are supposed to be subject to their husband in the same manner that they're subject to our master, Yeshua, why would we assume that there's exceptions with that? Unless there's specific exceptions stated, why would we assume that? Anyway, I love them with the love of Messiah. He mentioned that earlier as well. That's right here in this passage as well. So it all comes down to, this is something that he's summarizing from the balance of Scripture, right? He summarizes it here in a very specific way, but this is something that's taught all through Scripture, that women are to submit themselves to their husband, in the same manner that the assembly, that Yah's people are supposed to submit to him.
Very cool. Brother Jan, how about give us a little bit of background on your marriage and how you order your house?
Yeah, so for my marriage, for the past several years, my Shai has been really, I tend to, has been wonderful. I tend to lead by example. And, and because I put my effort into everything, then my expectation is that same thing will be mirrored in my Shai. And so also when it comes to the way our house functions, we function in a hierarchical type of design. And so when I look at the household, and this was something, we discussed before getting married, looking at the household, I see the household as more like I'm a steward of a design, a structure that the Father has set up, and I'm a steward of that. And so I have to answer to the Creator for the way my house functions. He gives me the loan. You think of it in a small business setup. He gives me the loan. The Father is the bank. He gives me the loan. I create the business. I'm the steward of that. And so I'm directly involved with the interaction between the bank and myself, right? Which the Father and myself. And so anything that happens under me, under my stewardship, I'm going to be the one to have to answer to that. And so consequently, we have a hierarchical design to our household because of that. Historically in my background, I have, because of my, job and because of my, just my experience overall and what I do, I'm used to being in control, or I would say supervising people under me. And I mean many people under me. And so with that comes certain skills that you develop over time. And I apply those same concepts to my marriage in terms of organization and making sure that the house functions properly, making sure there's a direct stream that goes all the way up to me. And there are layers of things that are delegated that each layer has to answer to the layer above it. And so we function in a hierarchical setup. And this was something we discussed up front. Now, what I will say is this, is that if you're a young man and you're thinking and you're evaluating a woman for an Isha, to be your woman biblically, you have to really evaluate whether or not she's a completer of tasks. For me, it was important for me at the beginning of my relationship to actually look at the history of my Shia and see if she had a history of completing tasks that were assigned to her. And that was going to be important for me because being a steward, I need to know that the person who I have delegated certain parts of authority to in order to function and develop lower levels of my house, my total household, I need to know if they have a history of completing tasks that are assigned to them. So that was something that was really big on me growing up. There were things that, my parents needed me to do, my father needed me to do, and I had to learn a lesson early in life that tasks had to be complete. You have to be a doer. You have to complete that which you set out to do. And so that's how our house is based. And so in that structure, we're able to function quite well. And it's been a blessing to me and my children. Now, going back in history, I've had to learn those lessons, huh?
If I could interject real quick 1 second, you make a great point right there in terms of evaluating the woman. Does she have a history? What does her history look like? Does she complete tasks, so on and so forth? But I think we also need to address that with regards to men, because there's so many young men that think, oh, when I get married, I'll start doing these things. I'll start taking care of these chores, or I'll start acting in a different manner. And that just is not true. You will carry into marriage what you're doing right now. And so a point for the young men or the men who are looking at this and saying, you know, I want to be a good husband. Well, start being a good single man. Okay. Start doing now the tasks that, or the things that will make you a good husband, because that will carry over into, and I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to jump on that one because I think that's a really important
that's a beautiful point. And that was something that was instilled to us growing up, that, you know, you're going to have to complete tasks, and you're going to have to complete them on point and in an excellent manner, and not with a bad attitude. So the household that my father ran, and I knew, you know, 3-4 generations. I knew 3 generations of, you know, my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather. So I knew all of them. And so what happens to me is that that gets passed down. And so from a masculine standpoint, I knew very clearly what kind of function, how I needed to function in a marriage. That I had that modeled to me, and that was fantastic between, you know, my parents, and that was a commitment they had. So when I got out from under my parents, you know, from under their covering, then those were some of the things that I was looking for a woman. Now, going back, being in the society or in the community that I was in, it was really a matriarchy. And you know, we talk about, you hear all on YouTube, you know, this concept of matriarchy, this concept of gynocracy. And it was very much that kind of culture. Now, my immediate family culture didn't function that way, but the greater society in which we found ourselves in our subculture really did function that way. And so that was always antithesis to how our family functioned. So when I got out, you're getting done with schooling, and you're progressing in life as you age. You know, I had to go through a couple of marriages where I had to stand my ground on certain issues, and those issues were unexpected because the society in which I was in said, "Hey, if you're a man, you let the woman do whatever she wants to do." And so that was antithesis to how I grew up, and so that caused a disruption in early marriages that I had, where it didn't work out. So one of the things that I learned, so the reason why I tell like some of the young men watching, you have to really evaluate the woman who you're dealing with. There was no evaluation from the culture that I came from. So there was no real strong evaluation. It was very much a particular mindset. So if you married somebody, right? And I can remember in my first marriage, man, where the person I married, you know, the woman that I married, man, she was really driven. And this was a time where, hey, you know, the concept of feminism was being pushed so strong in certain communities, where the idea was for the woman to rule over her relationships and over her men. And that was really a strong concept, to the point to where if she didn't like your religious beliefs, or she could just say, "Hey, you need to stop going to church. Hey, you need to stop being a Sabbath keeper. You need to stop your culture. And if you don't, then XYZ," putting these ultimatums to you. And that just didn't fly. That didn't fly with me from the men that I was raised from. And so that caused situations for me not to work out, because I was going to stand my ground, because I had been raised in a patriarch household. And so when I look at those things, the mistakes that I made there, I would say, you know what I should have done? I should have evaluated very closely the mindset of the woman in terms of, is she a completer of tasks? And then I need to evaluate whether or not her mother is a completer of tasks, and then look at her grandmother in the same way. You have to look at the generations of women that they come from in order for you to get enough information in order to really evaluate the kind of product you would be getting. Once again, you're a steward of something that the Father gives you, right? So if you're a steward of that, you're going to look. You need to look and evaluate everyone working under you to see whether or not this job is for them. And frankly, that's the stuff that I had to learn.
Yeah.
Can I jump
Wow.
in real quick, Pete? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I got a jet. I've been asked to be part of a thing at the VFW for Veterans Day that I had completely forgotten about, and I apologize. I'm leaving my stream open so that my people can benefit from this amazing stuff you guys are laying down. I'm just muting my mic and my camera, and my stream's just gonna keep going. So y'all have fun. We're getting really good likes on this on my end. I don't know how it's going on yours, but my men are really enjoying it, and I apologize for ducking out like this for my own sake, just me missing out on this stuff, because this has been some great stuff. I apologize for interrupting you, Brother Jan.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Brother, love you.
Brother, thank you, man.
Take care now.
Zach,
But
love
yeah.
you, man. Appreciate you dropping in. I think that the fact that your stream is connected here, as long as you don't close the computer, you can probably take your phone with you or whatever you've got. I don't think it's a problem. Because it's locked in here, so you might not have to worry about it. The stream will stay live until we end it.
Well, just in case, I'll just leave it. I don't need it anyway. So,
all right, be
you,
careful. Thank you for your service. Have a great evening.
You too, sir. Jeremy, wish I could have got a chance to talk to you, brother.
Yeah, I'll call you Monday. Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, I'll pull him off the screen. Go ahead, Brother Jan.
Yeah, and so and so those are some things that I had to learn. And I'll bring up one other quick point too that Brother Zach made. He made a good point about his there's this natural urge that for you to like women, right? There's a natural urge for you to like women, for you to like naked women, for you just as a man. This is a natural impulse, a natural instinct the Father placed in you. This idea that you have to push that away, is something that really comes out of paganism. It was, one point to bring up is that the priests of Baal, the priest of Ashtoreth, would oftentimes promote men acting as or having spirits like females, even to the point where many of her priests would castrate themselves. And so it was seen as a great value for a man to do such a thing, to forego his natural impulse and to actually try to emulate a woman. And this was in the actual worship of Baal, the worship of Ashtoreth. And so that bleeds into the asceticism that we saw during the time of the Middle Ages, that asceticism that, hey, forego sexuality, your natural urges as a man, and we'll push that away, and we'll completely renounce women altogether. And so that pushes into the Middle Age, and then you find that in the Victorian age. And in that Victorian age, what do we have? We start to run into the American Great Awakening, right? Where you start to have these movements, a couple of the American Great Awakening in the 1700s and the 1800s. And you see that bleed into Western religion, this idea that men should feel bad for having natural urges as men, right? So that stems all the way back from paganism. So for a man to exercise his natural urge, his natural desire to have to be a steward of his household, to be in control of his household, and to guide his household, not in a wicked way, but in a righteous way, based off the law, statutes, and commandments of Yah.
Excellent. Yeah, good stuff there. A little bit of background for me. My wife Kelly and I are approaching 32 years of marriage. In fact, technically we were trying to do the math the other day and sort of figure something out. Now we saw the Justice of the Peace 2 days before I left to go to Ranger School in 1992. And so January the 10th of next year will be 32 years according to the time frame with the Justice of the Peace. However, since then, one of the things I've learned is that sex or sex plus intent. Now, Jeremy would argue here, if Zach were here, the two of them would already be going at it. Just one of these friendly debates we have about exactly what the scripture have But
sex is definitely involved.
yeah, sex is definitely involved. The point is Scripture describes it as a one flesh union. It doesn't describe a priest or pastor or anybody else being there. It doesn't describe a marriage license or anything else. Ultimately, it's when the man and woman come together, and then the hot debate is whether or not intent or a covenant is required, and that's more of the debate that we have. It's good, friendly debate, but we have probably already crossed that line for 32 years in our case. The point during that time frame, I'd say that our marriage was a good one. Probably wasn't a great one. At points it was really good, and at other points it was up and down. I usually thought I was the head or felt I was the head, but didn't really find out until about maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, that I was not as much in control or as much the leader as I thought I was. And for me, that was a major wake up call. And it was not long before I actually started writing this book, because I was doing a deep study, particularly through the Torah, but then through all of Scripture, dealing with authority, headship, family structure, how that relates to the restoration of Kol Israel, or for those who don't necessarily understand that piece, how it relates to the restoration of culture, and how it relates to the restoration of society, and everything that seems to be crumbling around us. And the key to that is getting the authority structure in the home fixed and correct. And part of that is understanding that the pastor is nowhere in the authority structure. It's God, Messiah, man, woman. Yeah. Your pastor's there maybe to give you some wisdom and to give you some insight, but he's technically nowhere in there as far as the authority structure. Elders, as we would understand from the Torah, from the Tanakh, from the Old Testament, we would understand that the elders are actually patriarchs. They're the older men that have got the fruit. They've got the families that are making decisions for their own families, not for other people's families, apart from discussion in the city gates. So I learned a whole lot about that. But probably, if we're going to kick off and maybe move into this second hour with some specifics dealing with some of the unwritten rules, one of the ones I would like to take a few minutes and talk about, and part of what precipitated this whole discussion, and we can discuss this because we had some discussion afterwards. But I'll lead out with one of the unwritten rules is not allowing yourself to be emotionally manipulated by your woman. Now, I can tell a little bit of backstory, but I want to start with going to something that I read maybe earlier today by Jordan Peterson, talking about the fact that when men have a disagreement, or when men have a discussion that moves into a debate that then moves into heated debate, we know the rules. We know where it's going. We know that if you keep pushing the bar, this is going to turn into something physical. We're going out behind the woodshed and we're going to work it out, right? Men can fight. The challenge that we have, though, is that oftentimes men have no understanding of what the rules are, rules of engagement with a woman or even their woman. And the end result is a lot of times men, and I was one, not there anymore, but I was one. A lot of times it's common for men to walk in fear of their woman when their woman makes threats or lashes out with emotional responses. I'm going to do this, or you'll never do that again, or, whatever, or threatens to walk out the door. And a lot of times what that is really is it's a test. It may be a threat, but a lot of times it's a test to find out whether or not you as a man are going to stand up to her. And so men, particularly in our very beta male laden culture, men will back down because they're afraid of, oh my gosh, I'm going to offend the woman. And this is something that I addressed in a video. It's been a while back, Baal, Asherah, and the monogamy only cult, but specifically talking about the fact that culturally feminism has led to this idea that woman sits on the throne and it's man's job to come get on one knee and ask her to please, oh, please marry me. And then I'll do whatever it takes to keep you happy. And so we hear the beta culture lines of happy wife, happy life, or, whatever, let me go ask the boss, or, whatever. When the woman, the way that she's created, the way that she's designed, doesn't really want the man to buckle. Now, she's going to give the fires of hell to push it, thinking that she wants what she wants. But when she does, if he buckles, what she really does is she respects him less than if he stands up and says, no, we're not going to do what you think you want to do, or whatever. The man having a spine and standing up and resisting the emotional, the emotional manipulation, because woman can't control a man physically. Man's just bigger, stronger, generally speaking, outweighs, towers over, whatever. And so she resorts instead to manipulative actions or deceptive actions in order to control. And as men, if you're going to control your house, the first thing you have to do is learn to recognize that, and then to resist that, to stand up and say, no, not in my house. This isn't going to happen. So let me start by throwing that out on the table, because that's a whole bunch. And we've got more to feed into this particular discussion. But
yeah, I would say it's, in Western culture, it is the way that women deal with disagreement is emotional manipulation. It's just default. And some of them realize they're doing it, some of them don't. But either way, it has to be addressed. It has to be stopped. I mentioned earlier what my method of stopping it is, it's very effective. And that emotional manipulation, if you allow that to control you, will always result in you doing less than what the Most High has for you. It will be less than dominion, and that's what He calls us to, dominion. So,
and I tell you, from my experiences, like Pete said, like Brother Pete said, is that it is so important for you as a man to stand 10 toes down on your belief system. I've had situations where, people wanted to disconnect with me simply because I have my religious stance on the Shabbat or the feast days. And so that's too much for me, to test you to see whether or not you are forego your belief system in order to follow after this potential relationship with someone. And so once you have resolved in your personal life your commitment to Yah and to following His ways, and that is going to be the hill that you die on, what happens is that you simply as a man could care less about whether or not someone likes what your position is. You are going to state exactly what you believe, how you want your household ran, what your expectations are. In Western society, as men, we're taught not to have any expectation, not to have any standard. But that is not so scripturally. You are to have standards, especially as a steward of the household economy. Remember, I said this in the chat earlier, where, when you look at Hebraic culture and you look at the ancient culture, what happens is that the household, right? The estates function more like small businesses. You did not have, child care, care of elders, care of the homeless, or help for the homeless. All of that extended from the household estate. It was not contracted out to foundations or to government entities. This was something that was all part of the function of what the household would do. And that's why Father Yah was constantly like, hey, love the stranger, for you were strangers. Hey, take care of the widows and the orphans. Okay. Help them. Because it was not something you can go to the to the Red Cross and say, hey, these people need help, or, I'm going to go to Salvation Army, get you some stuff. No, the households were estates that took in people after war. Somebody else's household or city was completely decimated, and they would have to come over to your estate, and you would try to find a place where to place them and the situation to give them. So the houses function more like almost like a business mindset, and these little businesses is what would cause dominion in ancient Israel. When you look at especially the era of the judges, each man's house was his estate that he was a steward over, and that he had to answer directly to Yah for. And so I think if you take that kind of mindset into building your home as a young man, then you say, hey, listen, you know what? I have to follow these protocols at all costs, regardless of anybody's feelings. It's not about feelings at that point. It's about duty. And so when you're thinking about the idea of of piety, or you're thinking about the idea of holiness or being set apart, that is a duty. So duty comes before emotion. And once you as a young man learn that and commit yourself to it, then you won't care about whether or not someone likes what you're doing. You're going to march forward because that's what you believe in. Okay, that's where you stand. And once you do that, then it'll make sense.
Wow, good stuff right there. I really like your comment there. Duty comes before emotion, and I was gonna continue with the discussion that we're having here, but I was going to step back a little bit to where we were talking about emotional manipulation, and make the comment that when your woman comes with emotional manipulation, the last thing you want to do is respond with emotion, right? Because all that does, Rainmaker, much earlier in this discussion, had made the comment that if you get into an argument, if you allow yourself to get into a heated discussion, what you've just done is you've taken your woman and elevated her to peer status. You've given You've given oxygen to the fire and allowed the fire to exist instead of saying, no, not in my house. This isn't how we do things. I'm not playing this game. You're part of my house. This isn't a joint venture. This is my kingdom, and you are part of the vision that you've been given to me as a helpmeet, right? We're not equals.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that men have to get through their heads is, you are not an equal with your woman. She is not your equal. Now, culture, all of culture is all about, built right. Thank you, sir. Right there. It's a two-headed monster if you think that you're functioning as equals and you're not. So you cannot respond with emotion. Instead, you have to be firm and unbending. That means that you have to be the man, and you have to be willing to take the heat until you establish the authority in the home. And that's a very uncomfortable thing. I can tell you that as I was establishing a higher level of authority in my home. See, listen, in my house, if you come to my house, my wife calls me sir. Well, actually, let me be more specific. Both of my wives call me sir. Okay. In my house now, for me, discipline issue, if I've got a situation that I have to address, my woman will come and she'll kneel down before me so that we can have this discussion. It's a master bond servant relationship at that point, and we're going to have this discussion from that position so that the authority structure is maintained and so that it is affirmed in the process of our discussion. Now, certainly, I want to hear her concerns. I want to know what her concerns are. I want her to have the freedom to voice those, but it needs to be done respectfully, and it needs to be done at a proper time and place. Okay, and then she understands that after she voices her concern, then very simply, after she voices that concern, I'm going to deal with it, and however I deal with it is how I deal with it. And if I say, you know what, I don't see that as a concern, we're moving forward, we move forward. If I go, wow, that's really interesting, haven't seen it from that perspective, let me stop and think about this thing, let's adjust course a little bit, we can do that as well. So she has a voice, but I'm the king, right? I'm the final authority in my house, right?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to address one comment here from James. He asked a question here. And I think the answer is sort of. Lay down the rules. Don't listen to the manipulation. But I would add to that, you need to teach her not to be manipulative. If she's manipulating you and you're simply resisting the manipulation, that's a good first step. But ultimately, she needs to learn not to do that. So whatever your method of teaching her that is, that definitely needs to happen. Anyway, wanted to address that real quick.
Yeah, that was a good point, Jeremy. Yeah, that was a fantastic point, Brother Jeremy. I think correction is also needed. Some are, there's different forms of domestic discipline. But, oftentimes, what happened to us after we sinned? Well, we lost being in the presence of the Father. And so that's one of the methods, one of the major methods that I have used in the past that is very effective to me, because as a man, I see myself that just naturally as the light, the guiding principle in the household in terms of the vision of the household, right? And so if I withdraw my light, then what'll happen is then the whole house will be dark. Okay, it's the same with the Father. If he withdraws his presence from us, King David often said, "Do not take your presence away from me." And so that's something that's that men, if you're dealing with a situation when you take your presence away without reacting, a lot of times it'll even make them more angry. Okay, and then that's when you can actually deal with her in a way to where the manipulation is gone, and she's even more angry at that point, and then when she's off of her guard, then you can now, when you repent, you're ready to talk to me, then I'll talk with you, I'll deal with you, but I have to withdraw my presence. And that's what some people do. Of course, domestic discipline is certainly an action on top of withdrawing your presence as well, depending on the violation itself. But it has to be a response, maybe not an over response, not something that's unjustified, but it has to be a correction when something is violating your authority or disrespecting you in the house. Apostle Paul constantly said, "Hey, wives, respect, men, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands." And that respect is love to a man. I don't need a woman to love me. I need you to respect my authority. And I think once men understand that it's respect that they need, not love. See, in our culture, they teach you need love, right? And they tell you to respect the woman. But it's actually biblically the other way around. And once you understand your position, hey, I need respect. That's what I see. That's what feeds me as a man. That's what makes me go beyond, is the respect she holds for me. Just like Brother Peter said, hey, his Ashaya calls him sir. Mine calls me sir or master. And that's something that she does naturally. Didn't ask her to do it. But the way that I teach and the way that I live in my house, that's what we teach. And so naturally, as I taught that to her before marriage, before that, she began to take on that characteristic. Why? Because that's how I act towards the Father. I'm going to be respectful to the Father in my prayers to the Father, and how I treat him on Shabbat, how I honor his feast days, that respect I have for him. Right. That should translate for her because she sees my example for her doing that to me. Okay. Right.
So what we see in Scripture, we see, covenant loyalty, the way that that's portrayed from the top down, it's portrayed with blessings and love and care and protection and provision. From the bottom up, it's seen as obedience, right? And so what does Yeshua say? If you love me, you will keep my commandments. All the way through the Torah, we see the Father saying, do this. This is how you show me love, is by being obedient. Well, it's the same thing in my house. You said respect, and I think actually I know what Jeremy was thinking, because the Greek there actually says fear, or can be translated as reverence. It's actually heavier than respect. Respect softens it up. She, do I simply respect Yeshua? And I'm not questioning that.
Mhm.
Or do I really, I mean, it is a worshipful, it is a fear of him as my head, my Messiah. And her relationship to you should mirror that,
Mhm.
right? You're exactly right, though. Culturally, we're taught that the man's supposed to love the woman and the woman's supposed to respect the husband. But scripture never tells the woman to love the husband.
No.
Tells her to
Oh.
respect. Never tells the man to respect the woman. Tells the man to love the woman, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of 1 Peter 3. Peter holds Sarah up as an example,
Mhm.
and of
Mhm.
her calling Abraham Lord, or I think Adon is the word behind it there. So yeah, the respect, the reverence, the fear that is there. It's a match to what we're supposed to have towards the Most High and towards our
Mhm.
Messiah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Let me put a bow on this one, and then I want to throw something else out there right quick. I would just remind men with regards to emotional manipulation: do not get wrapped up in her emotion. You need to make sure you stand firm, and you need to be careful and compassionate, and but do not allow yourself to be controlled. And a lot of times it's the fear of what she's going to do that she's trying to utilize to control you. And you've got to learn to be fearless with regards to her manipulation and her control. If you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what the Most High would do in that situation, or what Yeshua would do in that situation, you walk forward and take the heat. You do that a few times and she'll figure out that doesn't work on you anymore, and your world will change.
Mhm.
Now, let me shift gears just a little bit, because I know something interesting happens in all three of our houses that I would bet happens in very few houses out there in the world. And this is classic patriarchy. And it's an unwritten rule that's pretty classic, that demonstrates the role and relationship. Most evenings, I will sit down at the dinner table at dinner time, and my wife will go fix me my plate and she will bring it to me. And, sometimes if there are choices, she'll come ask what I would like or whatever. I'm the king of the house. And it's not something that I asked her to do. It's something that she recognized was a great way to demonstrate service to me, the head of the home, and to show me her love and care for me in that way. And if I'm not mistaken, that happens in both of y'all's homes as well, does it not?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely happens in my home, and I have a lot of life going on in my home, but she always will, for me, make sure to sit down my plate and make sure that I have food first. Because as a man, I might eat first, then go and make sure things are good around the house, so I'm gone. But she, out of respect for the way we have our culture set up, she always does that for me and Jeremy. Yeah, brother Jeremy. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's I when it's time to get food. Most of the time, I have 7 children, so there's a lot of activity happening at supper time. Most of the time, we don't put the food on the table and then everybody pass it around. It's over in another part of the kitchen, and then the plate. Make your plate and go sit at the table. I automatically go sit down and my food is brought to me. Occasionally she's taking care of, maybe the 10-month-old or something like that. And so, my older daughter will get the food or something of that nature. But it's a very rare occasion that either her or my older daughter is around and I get my own food.
But I'll wager from a patriarchal standpoint, it's a clear demonstration of who is the head of the house. But at the same time, that doesn't happen a lot of places. That probably does not happen in 99% of the homes in, 2-person households. Now, obviously, if it's a broken home, that's a whole different cup of tea as well. In my house, something else special happens. Most mornings, my Kelly is up before I am, and I call her the coffee fairy because about the time I wake up, a cup of coffee is appearing on the nightstand next to me, and usually a kiss first thing in the morning. And so, that's just the care that she has for her master, even as I am always in a protective and providing state for her and for our home. So yeah.
And this is a perfect example of some of the differences. I mean, you don't have a 10-month-old at home, right? So Kelly's not up.
Yeah, no,
not
right.
up in the middle of the night taking care of a baby.
Yeah. No.
Whereas Sarah is, right? And so Sarah is typically getting up shortly before I leave for work. So
right. And you leave really early anyway. I think a lot of times you're on pretty early.
And so that's an opportunity, maybe later in life I'll have a coffee fairy as well. But I mean, at this present time, it's an opportunity for me to love her, right?
Sure.
Hey, sleep as long as you're able. You get to sleep when you're able to. So
great point.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I fabulous point there. In our household, and I have to, I just thank my Shai for being so committed to a biblical concept of our family. When I get ready to go, to work and I have an intense setup. She's changed the kids. She has everything set up with them in the household this early morning. She runs down, packs, my lunches, the food that I'm going to eat, my water bottles that I'm going to need. She has everything packed up in my bag, ready by the door. I'm ready to roll out. And so that's something that she feels impressed to do based on scripture and based on her commitment to my headship, commitment to me as her master. And that's, man, I tell you, for the young guys, that's something spiritual for a woman. When your woman gets to the point where through prayer and through teaching of correct doctrine and scripture, where she wants to serve you in this manner so that you can go and extend the borders of your home and you can extend the borders of your dominion, that is a blessing. That is a blessing. And I really thank her for that. And I would tell you, when she does that, those acts where she is committed, you have to make sure to thank her and appreciate her for those things, right? Because, yes, she's told to do that in scripture, but you have to recognize it. If I'm a steward, if I am an employer of employees, I'm going to recognize the employees who really go out of their way to make sure that my business thrives, to make sure that we're gaining ground in the economy. It's the same concept in the home, if not more so. I'm going to thank her. Hey, I really appreciate what you did for me this morning. You got everything squared away. Hey, that made my day smooth in the morning. I was able to get stuff done and do X, Y, Z to expand our borders even more so. So she needs to see how that connects to your work of extending the boundaries.
Right. And a good example of that, I would say, is Proverbs 31. A lot of times Proverbs 31, Proverbs 31 woman, it's used to extol women and then talk about how they can head off and be good business owners or whatever. But the truth is that is King Lemuel, which I believe is probably Shlomo, having a discussion, I believe, about about one or more of his women, or he could be talking about his mother. But the point is he's doing exactly what you're talking about, and that's praising her because she is about whatever's necessary to build her master's business, to build her master's estate, to build her master's house, and taking care of all the different pieces, parts. And it's a beautiful thing when the man can trust his woman or his women to do what it is that he's asked them to do, or what their part is in helping him accomplish his vision, because that's what they're given to him in the first place, right? She is there as a helpmeet to accomplish his vision. Go back to the section we talked about, mission and vision statement, right? So that's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sure. Proverbs 31, and this is maybe a slight bit off topic. I'm not sure this is an actual woman he's talking about. I think he's talking about this is what to look for in a woman, more so. But anyway, go ahead.
And
That's a tall order. There aren't many women out there right now. What they think is that you need to be what do they say? The 6 feet tall, six pack before and all of them think that they're 10s, and that's just not the case. We go back to the woman needs the man. The man doesn't need the woman.
And and I tell you, as you know, those of us, we all have children. I mean, it's so important that when I look at the generation before me, there was not really a big emphasis to the degree that I have now when you actually follow Torah all the way on vetting potential wives. And for young men, if they have, so-called girlfriends or people that they're interested in, man, you have to really know criteria. And I would tell you, go read the 25th, 26th, 27th chapters of Ecclesiasticus for you to get a vision of the kind of personality type that will help you in a dominion call. You really have to vet the woman, the family of the woman, all the way down to the third and fourth generation of those that came before her, for you to get an idea of is she potentially up to this task. And I cannot underemphasize that, because a lot of mistakes from brothers that I've heard, and from even my own experiences, almost being half a century, if you don't vet correctly, it's not just vetting the woman. You have to vet the family. You got to vet her father. Did she have a father in the household? How did her mother interact with her father? How did her grandfather, they interact with the grandmother? What were their principles? What were their belief systems? You need to know that, because it's going to help you, especially if you're planning on walking in Torah. You need to know that so that you can assess risk versus benefit. Okay, and because that's important, because now you're in a world where you have no fault divorce all over the place. You have different levels of birth control, including abortion. These are really important things. So if you take it all the way and you take a woman to be your Shia, you need to understand the risk or benefits of doing that with that particular woman that you chose. And so vetting is extremely important for a culture that wants to restore Kol Israel.
Yes, very much so. I think it was Rainmaker Arms that earlier in the comments made a comment about not just looking at the mother-in-law to see the direction or the trajectory that a potential woman is headed towards, but looking at the father-in-law and recognizing that what she has as her father is very possibly what is being expected by what she expects in a man. And in some cases, you look at the father-in-law and go, yeah, no problem. I can beat that in spades. But other times you recognize that there's going to be some high stuff to live up to. And so you make a great point in terms of looking at the family dynamic that you're drawing the woman from. Now, it's not an immediate deal breaker if those things aren't all picture perfect. You just have to recognize that she's coming with that baggage, and then you are going to have to take control of and train out of whatever that baggage is. One of the amazing things, and this again, unwritten rule of patriarchy, one of the amazing things about women is that they are malleable and remain so for a fairly lengthy period of time. Ideally, a woman is bound to join to one man for life, and so she is molded to him. What's interesting about a man, though, is a man is fairly rigid by the time he's in his mid-20s, and he should continue to get stronger in that rigidity and be unmalleable, which should tell you something about the difference in the way men and women are created and their respective roles. It's the responsibility of the woman to be molded to the man, and it's the responsibility of the man to mold her to himself. Men, you have to teach her what it is that you want her to do. You have to train her to be a helpmeet so that she's effective helping you accomplish what it is that you need to accomplish. I can't tell you how often Kelly will, she does this most every morning or sometime early in the day, is she'll stop by, my office is here at home. When I'm not on the road, she'll stop by and she'll say, "What do you need me to do for you today? How can I help you do what you need to get done today?" And sometimes it's like, "Babe, it's great. I don't have anything that I need done." Other times I'll say, "I need you to call so-and-so. I need you to do such and such. I need you to order something." And she's like, "Okay, I got it. It's taken care of." And I can take those things off of my plate and focus on what I've got to focus on that's other.
Yeah, beautiful point. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
One side point, you mentioned that the man is non-malleable, right? Or should be. I think that's another thing for those of us who have daughters, is make sure we're paying attention to the man that's interested in our daughter. Is he a good man, right? Is he,
talk about
right?
that?
Is he one that's going to lead her correctly, or is he, useless ultimately? Is he going to be, is he going to be abusive? Is he going to be, there's all kinds of
Good
things,
provider.
right?
Can he
Because,
get
is
security?
he a good provider or not? Is he,
Can he protect her?
Is he a protector or not? One of the things that it's important to pay attention to, because like you said, men don't change as easily in once they reach a certain age. So if he's not already on track to be a good man, you may want to consider a different man for your daughter.
Yeah, I think
so do this, both of you men. Now, all I have is sons. I have my sons are between 21 and 27 now. 4 boys. Both of you have daughters that are in the older, starting to approach that marriage age. Talk a little bit about how you've prepared them. What are some of your thoughts? How have your thoughts changed as you've grown and understood headship and patriarchy more? And then talk a little bit about your expectations in, how are you going about looking for a perspective or a godly man?
I know for me, I have an elder daughter that that I will, I've told multiple times ever since, I came into her life when she, she's in her 20s now, and I came into her life, when she was an early teen. And, one of the things that I have told her is that if you're interested in a man, you need to check and see if he can finish what he says he's going to do. Does he have a history of finishing tasks? I beat that like a dead horse, because what I find in our culture today, with, video game craze, with, men checking out, you don't have finishers in this culture. And so you need to check to see if this guy completes tasks, whether it's, at his job, what was his history like as a child growing up? Was he always, slacking on stuff, or did he complete things that were placed before him as tasks to do? Something as simple as chores. Did he complete his chores? There's a good record of him completing his chores. What was he obedient to his parents? Did he respect the authority of his mother? Did he respect, especially the authority of his father? Did he have a father that related to his mother at all? Right. So these are things that I will talk to my elder daughter with, and I have 2 other younger daughters, and I have another a 4th one on the way. And so for me, I'm really looking to see the principles of whether or not he had a father. To me, that, we look at the statistics about fatherlessness. So for me, the first question just off the rip is, does the person have a father? If they had a father, how did the father lead the mother? Is there a manipulative mother-in-law? What is the dynamic there? Does the son properly respect the mother? Is there a good distance between the son and the mother, or does the mother act as a surrogate a girlfriend to the son? Is she too over involved in her son to the point where the son cannot mature?
Can't
So
cut.
yeah. So is the cord cut basically? And then of course there's spiritual things that we look for, and once they get to a certain age, and say, hey, you need to take these rules and apply them. If you want to walk in Torah, you walk in Torah. That's my expectation. But if you do not, these are rules that you need to know, that men who are committed to Torah are most likely going to be better from a risk benefit management for you. If you have offspring, and when you're in that vulnerable state of being a mother with child, you need a man you can rely on. And do they have a history of being relied on? So that's one of the big things that I teach my elder daughter.
So for me, my focus thus far has been primarily on preparing her to be the woman she needs to be. Began, teaching her how to cook. Well, my wife did. You don't want me to teach anybody how to cook. But Sarah began teaching her how to cook. As soon as was reasonable age-wise. And same thing is going on for the younger daughters as they start to get of age. Setting an example in the home. Through I don't hide the fact that I correct Sarah. Sarah doesn't hide the fact that she reverences me, often calling me sir right in front of the children. That's not just a hidden thing. Different things like that. So that's a major piece. And then also whatever man is interested in her, or whatever man she's interested in, I'm paying attention. I'm going to make sure that man, that's a good man. He comes from a good family. He's, a lot of the things you said, he finishes what he starts, right? If he's in college, is he finishing college? If he's not going that route, maybe he's going through a VOTEC school or something of that nature. Maybe he's just starting in his career. Can he hold down a job for a length of time? There's all types of criteria to pay attention to. So,
and something that I would do, I would certainly salute you men for proactively preparing your daughters. That's not something. Now, again, my sons are between 21 and 27, and I errantly, as I was coming along, of course, I already said that I thought I was the head of my house, and then I came to a pretty stark realization that I needed to make a course adjustment. But at the same time, also during that time frame, I errantly made the mistake, and this is a word of wisdom for you fathers of younger boys. You need to be intentional about developing young men as men. It's so easy culturally. It's so easy to let culture or school or everything around you, let the church or whatever. In our case, we're more of a Shabbat keeping Hebraic community. It's so easy to assume that is going to just take care of and teach them what they need, and it won't. And you'll figure it out too far down the road and realize that you've got to back up and start working on being very intentional and fixing some things. And so for me, in my circumstance, I'd say that I've had to back up and be very intentional at trying to train and teach my boys some things that I should have been teaching them all along, but I wasn't aware of the fact, my dad was a good man. I grew up in a good house. It was a good nuclear family, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, what was modeled for me wasn't taught to me, nor was I taught how to pass it on to the next generation. And so I did not do a good job of passing on to my sons the things that I was learning on my own at that point. With regards to headship and being the man of the house and being the authority in the home. And so I would encourage, you men, as you're working, as you're building your family, you must be intentional. You must be proactive. You must have a plan. You must be seeking to accomplish goals and phase lines, etc., with the development of your sons and your daughters. And men need to be raised as men. Don't assume that that just watching football on Sunday afternoon or whatever is going to turn them into men, because it's not. You need to get them out in the woods. You need to get them out doing hard things. Who was it, Nick, that we talked about recently with his 2 boys, maybe all 3 of his boys? One of our friends in one of the men's discussion groups, he was talking about one of the tests that he recently put his sons through. And I think his eldest might be 12 or 13. And they were on a remote camping deal, and he gave them a map, and he said, here, he sent the oldest by himself, solo, on a 1.5 or a 2-mile hike around a lake in an area that they had seen bear tracks recently. But he's raised his son and given him training along the way, and he's taught him. Right. And he said, this is your mission today, is to go out and walk this, and to do this and hit these checkpoints. And his son was terrified going out, and he was proud as just bold as a lion when he got home, because he had accomplished something of value and had done something that is part of what it takes to become a man. And one of the things I really like about Nick, and what is his handle? He's got a great YouTube channel. Homestead. Talking about Homegrown Liberty? Homegrown Liberty. Homegrown Liberty. Yeah. He's been on this channel before. We've had him for a couple different discussions in the past. But he's doing a fantastic job of raising his sons to be men and setting up hard challenges for them and getting them out to do hard things, instead of leaving them to the video games and leaving them to culture and leaving them to, So I would encourage the men out there to be intentional with raising your sons and your daughters to be the godly men and women they're called to be.
Tell you one last unwritten rule as a man in patriarchy. Learn the art of saying no.
Yes.
Yeah. Learn how to say no and not feel bad about it. In our society, they teach the men to never say no. So when I'm talking to my elder daughter, and and when I deal with even my sons and how they deal with their younger sisters, you have to learn to tell them no. And as a man, until you get comfortable saying no, you're going to always have issues. That is probably one of the things that no one will tell you about patriarchy. Part of protection, part of provision in a household and in developing a tribe is being able to say no. And I think, and then having the people who you say no to live with it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love the additional piece that you put in there. Learn not to feel bad about it, because if you feel bad about it, then you can be controlled and manipulated emotionally, because they'll figure out, particularly the women will figure out how to twist that. The young men will as well, if they're trying to play the game that they learned from the matriarchy or the gynocracy or whatever, the beta game. Men don't control men emotionally. Okay, if they do, or if they try to, that's a sure sign that they're betas. But if you're a man, you do not allow yourself to be controlled emotionally. And so if you have to say no, or if you have to put your foot down, do it, and don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad about it at all.
And one other thing I wanted to kind of add for an unwritten rule, one of the things in our house, and I'm sure it happens in your houses as well too, is that daily you need to train your woman to come and do a debriefing report to you of the daily activities. Whatever happened during the day with the kids, whatever activity she did, you need to get a report of that when you come home, just because she needs to give you one. And that sets up a type of hierarchical environment in your household that can train over time that this is an expectation. You have to do that.
It confirms the master bond servant.
100%. And this is, to me, this is one of the big things that we do in our household, because you need to know all the daily activities. And one of the things that I've expressed to my woman is that, hey, listen, I should never be walking into a trap inside the house or outside of the house. You are my eyes. You are my number one emissary in my conquest to extend dominion according to Yah.
Wow.
That's good.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Great stuff. Any final thoughts? My intent was to end this at about the 2-hour mark, and we are fast approaching that. We're at the 1:55-ish.
It didn't seem like it was that long yet.
No, this is good stuff. We're going to have to do some more of this, and certainly there's some other men that I'd love to have in here for similar discussion. But any final thoughts?
Along the lines of, and this is more, I don't know, for men who are usually working away from home, which I do. I'm gone most every day for work. One of the things that I do, she's usually getting up as I'm leaving, right? Or sometimes I'm leaving before she wakes up. So I don't see her until I get home in the evening. One of the things I have her do is most days I want to see a picture of her. Once she's dressed for the day and stuff, I want to see, how are you dressed? What do you look like? It's pleasing to me. And that's really the only reason it's pleasing to me. And that's her purpose, is to be pleasing to me. So,
very
another
nice
suggestion for you.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Good thought. I like it. Brother Jan, any closing thought?
You know what? I think it's for young men who have, if you've made mistakes in the past, we all have. It's a continuing learning process. As you grow in the Father, you grow in his knowledge, you grow in his wisdom, according to Torah, according to his word, the Bible. You may make mistakes, but you have to continue to go forward in his word, and you'll grow. And, if you haven't made any mistakes, you cannot have wisdom. And that's one thing that I would tell, all of us on our chat. We've made mistakes before in the past, but, we have been upfront with the Father, say, hey, Father, I've made mistakes. Forgive me for those mistakes. Renew me. And then now teach me your wisdom, teach me your word, and give me your set apart spirit so that I can continue to do the work of dominion. And I think that's the mindset you have to have going forward, because you live in an environment that is designed to have you go directly against the Hebraic culture, directly against Yah. And so you may make mistakes as a young man, but part of growing is learning. You learn from your mistakes, you mess up, you get back up, and you continue on. It's a race, like Apostle Paul says, and people are around cheering you on, those who have gone before, but you got to keep running. You got to keep running.
Amen. Good stuff. So I tell you what, I have really enjoyed hanging out with you men. I have the pleasure of seeing, or at least communicating with you men every day. We do through a men's Telegram group that I guess both of you, I think, on that one are in the admin group, and I know in the Patreon side we have a men's Patreon, joint Patreon channel, and then the women only section for ladies. And both of y'all are advisors and or admins in that, and I appreciate the wisdom that you bring and the access that you give so many other men and women who participate either in the Patreon or in the Telegram stuff. If there anybody out there that's looking for opportunity to, or men that are looking for the opportunity to communicate with other men that are Torah keepers and are patriarchally minded, my Telegram information is down here. I do have, drop me a Telegram, and I can connect you with a men-only Telegram group that is Torah keeping and patriarchal. Or either side, join us on Patreon. I've got, that's in the banner at the bottom here. Join us on Patreon, though. A lot of great discussion. We do some occasional video chats. I put some content up that's specific to our Patreon, stuff that we can't necessarily put out there for stuff that we can't necessarily put out there on YouTube, for the wide open or with the men. I mean, what precipitated this was specific discussion in just the men's group among the men about how to work on stuff. Good opportunity to pray for each other, good opportunity to encourage. Sometimes if you've got questions or developing situations, it's a good way for men to be able to support and encourage each other and that sort of thing. So I appreciate you guys. Love you both. I really do. Thank you so much for your contribution to Kol Israel. So
yeah, love you, brother. Yeah, both of you.
And I'll be seeing you here in a few weeks.
Yes, sir.
It won't be long.
Yes, sir.
So for anybody that's interested, there is going to be a biblical families retreat you would need to get in touch with. In fact, I'll put this in the banner real quick. It's going to be retreats at biblical. I'm going to misspell it here. Biblical families. There we go. I'm going to throw this up in the deal. This is a retreat that's going to be coming up. I misspelled it. I put an A right in there. Let me go back and edit that right quick. No, right here. I've got to edit this. I accidentally got an A in there. Retreats. But
retreats.
Yeah, retreats. I think that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Show that. Oh, please. But you've helped organize that. Now, I'm not going to broadcast here where the location is just yet, but it is going to be, I think, about the third weekend in January. The retreat itself is free. There's no registration for it, but it's we've all been to multiple different retreats at different locations. Great opportunity to meet other men and women and families that are patriarchally minded. They are, generally speaking, open to biblical marriage and what Scripture actually says about marriage. I know there was a hot debate going on in the chats earlier about that. So for some of you guys, if you want to learn some of that, go back and look at some of my other YouTube videos that discuss and deal with some of the challenges, because we've been fed a line in terms of the monogamy only deal. It's not what Scripture teaches. And so,
That's right.
But yeah, the retreats themselves are a great opportunity to meet other men and women that are patriarchally minded. And it's a great opportunity just to get away with your woman and hang out for a weekend. Only cost is going to be food and the hotel, because the retreat itself we make free. It's all generally Scripture related or Scripture. I would say it's ecumenical, non-denominational. We've got a lot of Torah keepers, a lot of Christian denomination backgrounds. All are welcome. We're glad to have you. The focus is going to be the retreats are more Torah friendly, and often the food is intentionally and carefully planned according to some of the dietary things.
Dietary laws. Yeah.
Yeah, the dietary laws. So, yeah. And Kendra, I'll tell you, I sit on the board as well as at least one other Torah keeper with regards to biblical families. So it's not a bad deal. So fantastic. All right. Does Kelly teach any classes for women on? That's a. She does do a lot of interaction in the women's Patreon group. that we've got, and we have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel that we do together. Some things. Typically, our position is that we prefer not to have a woman teaching. However, she and I can work on some stuff together. That may be something that we want to look at in the future. But our goal is to build godly men and women and families and that sort of thing. So, is that it?
Yeah, come on over to Patreon.
Yeah, would love to have you. Come on to the retreat. We're going to be in Brother Jan's backyard. I know. I'm actually today. I was thinking I want to get there a day.
You coming
early.
on? Oh yeah,
I'm coming a day early so I can
come
get
on
some
over.
precious time with my
Get some time to relax.
my beloved brothers. And I know Kelly wants to have
relax,
some time with Yuri Shah. So and Lily will be with us as well. So it's gonna be a good time. We're excited about coming. So fantastic. All right. Without further ado, we will sign off, guys. Thank you all so much for hanging with us all the way through this. This has been fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Kendra, you'll have to get in touch with retreats and ask for details and ask to get on the notification list. I'm not at liberty to turn out all the information right now here. But it's coming up. I think it's the 19th through the 21st of January in the Southwest, generally speaking. All right. So there you go. All right. Shalom, shalom to you guys. Shavua Tov. Have a great week. We will catch you later.
Shalom.